Hello and good morning, evening or afternoon, depending on when you are tuning into this, the latest episode of Edie's Susty Talk. If you're not familiar with this series, we launched it back last March, so March 2020, to keep everyone feeling connected to the sustainability leadership conversation during lockdown and beyond. And here we are a year later, still doing just that. I'm absolutely delighted to have Darian McBain on from Thai Union today, someone that we speak to regularly, but we haven't caught up in a while, have we?
No, we haven't, so it's lovely to be here. Nice to join you today, Sarah.
And to join you, and whereabouts are you dialing in from today?
I'm dialing in from Sydney, Australia, so it's the evening here.
Yeah, and first thing in the morning for me, and we don't know when anyone's going to tune into this. So yeah, lovely to be catching up with you, and I realise that it has been such a long time and that it should be a proper catch up. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what it's been like in your role during the pandemic. Obviously, I'm not incredibly familiar with what the situation's been like in places like Thailand and Australia.
So I think Thai Union has been incredibly fortunate that we have been able to continue. Our factories already had extremely high levels for safety and health and the environment. Already people were wearing personal protective equipment. So when the pandemic first hit, we were able to continue to produce. And as I'm sure you know, as you saw in your own supermarkets, tuna was one of those staples that people were stocking up on. And so we're fortunate that our supply chains were robust enough to withstand the shocks that were really felt throughout the system. Very fortunate that our factories could continue to manufacture. Of course, an amazing job by all of our workers globally. And then for my sustainability team in particular, we've always been a global team. So some of us in Thailand, some US, UK and Europe. And so we really just continued. That was actually a good opportunity to focus on some of the work that possibly we wouldn't have gotten done when we all used to travel so much.
And has it been more remote working for yourself though?
It has been more remote working. So I ended up in Sydney, Australia. So I'm not with my team in Thailand as I have been previously. But actually it's worked quite well. And when you reflect on, I think, the impact of having less travel, it's something that I hope we can all take into the future. Certainly I feel better for doing less travel. I think after a while you start to feel like you're missing some of those connections, but I also keep up with people really around the world, which is lovely.
Oh, well, good to hear that. And then you also mentioned that it had been, in many ways, easier to talk about sustainability and get certain things up and running. And I recently got the release about one of them, which is the first sustainability-linked loan package for the company. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the development and launch of that and what that looked like behind the scenes from the point of view of yourself and your team.
It was so exciting to finally be able to launch the sustainability linked loan. So I certainly can't take credit. I worked very closely with our finance team on this, but it's something we've been looking at for a number of years, probably 3 years. We'd started to look at how could we get either a green bond or a blue bond. How could we apply this to the fishery improvement projects that we're working on, looking at sustainable fisheries and supplying sustainable fish? And we couldn't really find the right product. We worked with a lot of different banks in Thailand and beyond, mainly in Southeast Asia. And our CFO at the time famously went to a sustainable seafood conference and said, I don't care what color you call it. It could be green, it could be blue, it could be a purple bond, but I need the rate of finance to be lower than my standard rate. And then the pandemic hit and we really suspended that work. We needed to focus on our core business and to ensure that we could supply our customers with products. And we came towards the end of 2020 and Thai Union needed to refinance some of its business debt. And that's when the opportunity of the sustainability linked loan came up. And it is a great opportunity because it really relies on our track record of achievement in sustainability. So there are 3 main key performance indicators that are linked to sustainability. And if we achieve each of those KPIs, then we get a reduced rate of interest on the loan. And so it is an amazing tool when you think that it's actually financing the business to continue on the business in a usual way, but it actually underpins that the business must be operating sustainably to meet the KPIs and achieve that reduced interest rate.
And it sounds like you sort of had some KPIs in mind and then went out to agree on them with the banks and the other partners. Is that right?
It was very much a collaborative process. So we had to find something that was measurable and specific and something that Thai Union really could have control over. And so we chose 3 KPIs. The lead one really is around electronic monitoring. So we just last week announced a new partnership with the Nature Conservancy. And one of the main things that we're doing is increasing transparency in our global tuna supply chains. And we're doing that through increasing the use of electronic monitoring and human observers on vessels in our international tuna supply chains. So what makes this exciting and part of Blue Finance is that we used that part of our partnership with TNC to turn it into a key performance indicator. So it's definitely going to have an impact on the water, both for environmental and social outcomes. The other 2 key performance indicators that we chose, one was remaining in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index in the food products industry, so within the top 10 of that category, and the other is related to our greenhouse gas emission reduction targets.
I love how you mentioned that it helps to finance like business as usual, but then make business as usual the sustainable part, so that has to be the whole of what you do rather than a set part of product or activity.
Exactly. It's actually a different philosophy to what we were looking at with the blue bonds.
Great. And I wanted to touch more about sort of this trend towards sustainability linked loans and blue bonds and green bonds more generally. So with the loans, we've seen them taken up by companies in all kinds of sectors, really. So we've seen energy majors, retail majors, forestry majors. But I wanted to get your views on why it's so important for the food sector. So obviously you're a company that's been working on this for many years, but do you think that this kind of financing is going to become more common and popular in general?
I think it will become more popular, and perhaps an industry needs to have a track record of achievement before they can start to look at something like a sustainability linked loan or a bond, because the financial institutions need to have the confidence that you really can perform to that high standard. But if we look at the oceans in particular and start to talk about ocean finance or blue finance, it's estimated that the returns from the oceans are circa $1.5 trillion per year, and yet the investment from blue finance is around 1%. So SDG 14, which is life below water, is actually one of the most underinvested of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that brings with it a huge opportunity, even before we start to look at the potential climate change impacts that are particularly being highlighted by organisations such as the High Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy.
And of course, the beauty of the SDGs is that they are all interconnected, and the climate and oceans one, obviously so.
Yes, and I think we'll see a lot more action. I mean, we're looking at activities such as how can you work with mangroves and seagrasses for biodiversity, but also use that as a kind of carbon offset and carbon storage. I think there are some huge opportunities that will come up over the next few years.
Well, we're doing a lot on biodiversity and nature-based solutions on the site, so keep your eyes peeled for that, and a shameless plug for some of the hard work that's been being done by my colleague Matt Mace at the moment. But while I have you on the phone today, I did just want to ask, you've touched on it already, but I wanted to get a summary of, there might be people listening that are looking for a sustainability linked loan for their own organisation. So what advice would you give to anyone what advice would you give to other sustainability professionals that are exploring a similar route?
So I guess the first is to have a great internal team. So we worked very closely with our finance team. They are the brilliant ones with the financial mind, so they could understand the boundaries. And then the sustainability team brought the technical sustainability knowledge. Then I think it's to talk to the different lenders. I mean, we were very fortunate. We did roadshows for Thailand and the Japanese lenders, and we ended up being over 2 times subscribed. So it just shows that there was great interest there. But start to have those discussions with the lenders first, and particularly a lot of the banks also have their own sustainability targets and goals. Mm-hmm. And so if you can align your organization's goals with the financial institution's goals, you're probably more likely to have a successful product.
Fantastic. And yeah, we've seen at the moment that those goals seem to be changing all the time. I've had 4 major US banks set new climate goals this month even. And
I think that is a part of it. You wouldn't set this up probably for a very short-term loan. Ours is a 5-year loan. And so you need something that you are committing to at least over that 5-year period. It would certainly be possible to commit over a longer period, but you don't want to have to change what those key performance indicators are halfway through the loan.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, some great tidbits of advice there, Darian, and that's all the questions we have time for on this episode. But just a quick reminder that this isn't a standalone video. This is an ongoing series that, as I say, we've been running since 2020. You can find all of the previous Susty Talk episodes on our website, edie.net, under the Susty Talk tag, and also on our YouTube channel under the same tag. And we'll be bringing you new episodes at least at a rate of 1 episode a week. But for now, it's a goodbye from myself and a goodbye for Darian. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. Goodbye, everyone. It's an honour to be here today.